Good morning and welcome to Legally Speaking with Attorney Antoinette Osbourne. This program is for information purposes only. If you need legal advice, you can contact me, Antoinette Osbourne, at 718-502-9137. Once again, that number is 718-502-9137. The office focuses on divorce, immigration, bankruptcy, real estate, and estate matters. Caller, you are on the air. You are live. You're in the live. Okay.
Yes. Morning.
Morning.
Green car up December. It's up. More putting for citizenship, right? But my case is real sticky car. I have some aggravated felony from way in the 70s, 80s. You know, and I mean, with the time and come out and I'm doing everything to my green card. You know, the waiver and everything. So there's one putting for citizenship now, you know.
And you've had
the liar from the case in past house and I'm waiting on Massachusetts.
Okay.
Yeah.
The difficulty is anyone who has been convicted of an aggravated felony does not have the good moral character for citizenship. So,
but you know, it's like 2-3 brands, you know, they want the same thing, you know, and then get them things.
I would need to see your dispositions, but how I know the rule, anyone who has been convicted of an aggravated felony does not have the good moral character for citizenship. I don't know if your friends, if they have changed their dispositions, but once you have an aggravated felony for immigration purposes, you don't have good moral character. So I'd need to see the dispositions. I can't go by what happened in your friends' cases. People do 440 motions and change their dispositions. So unless I see your disposition, I would not be able to, say whether or not you could apply for citizenship. But as far as I've never seen anyone with an aggravated felony get citizenship. That 212C waiver that you got allows you to be able to live, work, and travel freely outside of the country. It does not waive the fact that you have an aggravated felony. All right?
All right, now come check it.
Okay, that don't come without the dispositions. Certified copies. All right?
All right.
Okay.
Give me a copy, right? Yeah, it's fine.
On Sutphin Boulevard, my darling.
Sutphin, all right.
All right? Okay, bye.
Yep.
All right, so let me just go back into my disclaimers. All right, so the program does not constitute legal advice. It's just for information purposes only. And prior outcomes do not guarantee a similar result. Now, I can't go by what happened in your friends' cases. The reason being is sometimes your friends, colleagues, associates, family members are not truly honest in the presentation of their documents, and as a result of which someone basically trying to go along what happened with a friend where your factual circumstances may be different. It's not my job to assist you to end up in immigration court where you are my client. So I have to review all the documents. It is absolutely not fair to you, and it does not make sense to put in an application where it has absolutely no merit. And as an attorney, we are not allowed to put in frivolous applications. So this morning, good morning, everyone. I wanted to focus on sham marriages because it is such an important topic in the immigrant community, where for most people, one of the ways for them to get legal status is through marriage. There are not a lot of avenues to be able to obtain obtain your legal status. And unfortunately, through desperation, people will in fact engage in these marriages. So this morning I wanted to talk about, how it is that you come to their attention just by even your mere application, as to how it is you may end up in a fraud marriage determination. So I wanted to discuss that. I wanted to discuss also the ramifications of it. I wanted to bring to your attention the legal consequences of a sham marriage. So this morning, good morning, Nicola. Nicola is here this morning, and she is in fact acting as the moderator. So hold on a second. I did hear a text message come in. So let me kind of take a look as to, and anyone, you can feel free to different thing, feel free, you can text your message this morning. I think Sebastian last week, and I did not see it, was in fact asking because about traveling on your ID, right? Come 2025, and let me just see which month it is. You are not going to be able to travel on your driver's license without it being the enhanced new or real ID sort of document. So for anyone in New York, you know that the licenses are now enhanced. You can get an enhanced driver's license if it is that you can show proof of legal status. So you're able to get the enhanced driver's license. For those of you where you have no legal status, but you're able to get the driver's license, you will not, and this commences May 7th, 2025, you will not get on a plane to be able to travel state to state where you do not have that enhanced driver's license. How you would go about traveling is you would use your passport. So come May 7th, 2025, they are in fact requiring the real, what is by the Real ID Act. This is secure documentation in order to allow you to travel domestically. So just a reminder, because this is going to unfortunately happen to some people. They're probably late for the flight. They go, and then all of a sudden they are not allowed to board the plane because, of course, their ID is not secure. Good morning, Michelle. Good morning, Steffi. Right. So just a reminder, tell your family members, let your friends know, starting May 7th next year, in order to board a plane, you have to have your enhanced ID, whether it's your state ID, whether it is your driver's license, you must have it. All right, so today my focus, right? And always feel free to post your question in the live. You can also text your question to 718-502-9137. You can also call it in at 718-502-9137. It's the same number to make an appointment during the week. All right, so this morning, let's take a look at sham marriages. And this is where, through desperation, you engage in certain activity which has dire consequences if the marriage is ever determined to be a sham marriage. And don't forget to like the live. Don't forget to share the live. All right, so let's take a look. If it is ever discovered that you have engaged in a sham marriage, then you are subject to deportation. One of the dangers with the sham marriage determination is it is such a block that a future petition cannot be approved, right? in this for this sham marriage. If, however, you're in deportation proceedings, you can apply for a waiver. All right. One of their ability to determine sham marriages is if it is the marriage was terminated or annulled for immigration fraud. This is where a judge goes, looks at the evidence, and then your marriage is terminated based on the fact that you are marrying just in order to get a green card. You're not contracting in a marriage because you want to stay married to someone, build a life together. That's not it. So when people have these annulment papers where the marriage is terminated based on immigration fraud, this is also used by immigration, right? So what does immigration look for? They in particularly look to see whether or not at the time you entered into the marriage, whether it was specifically to evade the laws, the United States laws, their immigration laws. What was your purpose? Is it specifically just for the green card? You guys did not, there was no intent to build a life together. And this is so important. And this is why your document, your testimony is so relevant. And no one really wants this determination. As I said, it's a subsequent bar to you. And anyone who is caught up in an immigration investigation, it is truly exhausting to prove the adverse, right? So you have had cases where the immigrant, the spouse comes and they say that specifically the person refused to consummate the marriage. For people who do not understand what consummate means, it means that you refuse to have sexual intercourse with your spouse. So as a spouse comes and says, their focus was mainly on getting their paperwork, and at no point did they want to consummate the marriage. And you'd be surprised how people are quickly, they're ready to sign paperwork that the marriage is fraudulent, right? Now, people who have engaged, or it is determined that they have entered into a sham marriage and then they go ahead and they remarry someone else, then immigration looks at the first marriage. And unless you are able to rebut that presumption of marriage fraud in the first marriage, you are not able to get a green card in the second marriage. But there must be a determination that the marriage is in fact a sham, right? So immigration, how is it that they're able to determine this? They are looking at your conduct before you got married, and they're also looking at your conduct after the marriage. What is it that you have done as a couple that shows the government that you intend to build a life together, and this is just not for the purposes of a green card? And oftentimes this is through your testimony, the documents that you have. Very important. They look at art. So we want to take a look at things that they use to help facilitate this, right? In your interview, you are questioned. And especially if you're in a Stokes interview, you're separated, your spouse is asked a series of questions, and you're also asked the series of similar questions. Your inconsistency in your response is able to guide immigration as to whether or not the marriage is in fact fraudulent, right? You've had people where, in terms of when questioned, when did you meet? And the dates are different, you know. Um, you had one, and I'll tell you about a couple where they couldn't say, and this is a couple that had kids, right? So obviously their relationship was an intimate relationship. They could not state when they met. They could not state the periods of time they lived together. Answers inconsistent throughout. Uh, the husband gave a different answer as to the time period for the places that they quote unquote lived together. They couldn't state when they met, right? They couldn't state when it is that the husband, because initially the spouse was outside of the country, couldn't state the dates of travel when he would come and visit. Yeah. So, and they gave different answers with regards to the documents that were submitted. So, as a result of which, it was determined that their marriage was, in fact, a sham marriage. And I specifically tell people, you know, they used to have a song, "Pick Me Now, Whole Man Again." Yeah, it's not whole in immigration either. If your documents and your testimony cannot come to convince the officer that this is a bona fide marriage, your application will get denied. Good morning, Renee, and good morning, Derek. Yeah, your application is going to get denied. Don't think by the fact alone that you have kids that it is going to be determined that your marriage is fraudulent. All right, let's look at some of the indicators that USCIS uses to determine whether or not the marriage is in fact fraudulent. If you go into the interview and you're extremely nervous, right? This is an indication to them that the marriage may be fraudulent. You're so nervous, it's like you have something to hide. And this is where I try to tell my clients, don't get so nervous. It is obvious. It's like they're terrified to death. And understandably, you know, this person who is interviewing them has the right to determine whether or not they stay or if they have to go. So they become like extremely nervous. But extreme nervousness causes the officer to wonder whether or not you're in fact lying, whether you know you're being truthful. So we're just going over the pointers now, how it is that they are able to determine whether or not this is in fact a fraudulent marriage. Things that they are looking out for to assist them in their determination, whether it is that your marriage is bona fide or whether it's fraudulent. Let's look at you being late for the interview. And this is often where they would ask, especially if they become very suspicious. One person is late for the interview and they ask, and how it is they are able to determine whether or not you have actually come to the interview together. If you take the train, they may ask, what was the route to come to the interview this morning, right? So, and if it is that they become really suspicious, they'll separate you. And you have certain offices where by the jump, New York really doesn't do that unless it's probably just blatant to them. New York usually sets you into a Stokes, but I know specifically for me, I've been to Connecticut, I've been to Massachusetts. Those two jurisdictions, they separate you off the jump, and especially as a New York attorney, not being used to that, you know, I had to ask the officer because I'm thinking, what, we're in a Stokes as we come, and he's like, no, this is how we do it here. So not every state interviews you together, right? And if you drive to the interview, they will ask things like, where did you park? If your answers are different, it is clear that you did not come together, and probably you're not living at the same place. You didn't take the same route together, right? Lack of eye contact. I think one of the things when people are really trying to be evasive is that they won't make eye contact. And this is highly like suspicious, right? I'm not saying you're going to make eye contact that you're going to be offensive. But if it is that there is a like lack of eye contact between you and the interviewer, you're answering, you're just constantly looking on the ground, you're looking all over the place, you're not sure, then yeah, this kind of indicates to the officer that something may be up, right? All right. So Nicola is saying that Derek made a comment. So let's kind of take a look at what, see if I can see it. Oh, Derek says, good morning, Miss Osborne, to you and your staff. You're one of the best lawyers helping our communities. Thank you so much, Derek. All right. Yeah, when you are late for the interview, it's like the officer is trying to determine, did these people come together? You know, are they, it leads to the question, are they living together? I have been at conferences, usually when you're a part of ILO, there is like a main and annual conference. And I remember when I went to a conference and one of the speakers said he went to the interview. He and his clients are there and they were taking some time to call them in. Then the officer comes out, and I think this was California, right? Major cities like California, Florida, New York, oftentimes we are deemed like the tricksters, the scammers, because it's a wide immigrant population here. And the officer came out and he's like, let's go. And they're looking at each other like, let's go where? He's like, we're going to the house. Yeah. And he said, the petitioner and the beneficiary, right? They can drive in the same car, but they said the attorney is coming in their car, right? Because as an attorney, you'd be in the car wondering, you're asking your clients what's going on here. Because if they're going to your house, they suspect fraud, right? And I'll tell anyone, if they come for an investigation, it's always two. I've never been, especially if you come in to when they really suspect fraud off the bat. I've never been into an interview where it's not two, unless they're doing training, right? And you're training the new officer so that he can see how to conduct the interview. When you're going into a fraud interview, it's two, because there's one person to watch a question, to ask the question, take the answers. And then there's the second person to watch you, right? Extreme nervousness, things like that. All right. Answers prompted by an attorney. And this is where I tell anyone, your attorney can't answer the question for you. And if it's a factual question, the attorney does not live in your house. The attorney cannot say what time, you get up in the morning, what time your spouse gets up. This is factual questions where you are in the marriage. So therefore, this is something you should know. You should know how the house is set up. I don't go to my clients' homes. I barely even go to my friends' homes. Yeah. And the attorney cannot answer as to what's the setup of the house and so forth. Right. So this is another issue for them. If the attorney is like very aggressive and they're looking to butt in every minute and answer the questions. Yeah, I think when I just started, I was like very zealous and interrupting. And then when I read these articles like aggressive attorneys, because my personality by nature, I am a very aggressive person. Not everybody can deal with like my sort of personality. But Master, you send me see this? No, sir. I don't butt in unless the question is such that it's not clear. It's not even clear to me, right? And I would ask to rephrase the question because I will say, like, I myself, and I'm legally trained, I'm like, I don't know what you're asking. So I can assure you they don't know what you're asking. And the officer, will rephrase the question if it is you are in an interview and you do not understand. Do not assume certain things. You can say, I don't understand the question, right? The officer is going to rephrase the question for you because you're giving testimony, and the first thing that is done before you even sit down, or if you have sat, you are required to stand and you are required to be sworn in. And the purpose of that is it's sworn testimony, it's under oath. You can later be charged for perjury, right? And your answers are taken because it forms part of the record. So before jumping and answering a question wrongly, you don't understand it, the proper thing to do is is to say, I do not understand the question. There's nothing wrong with that. If you are speaking to, and of course the government is not your friend, but think about it. If you are in a conversation with someone and really and truly you don't understand the question, you're going to say to the person, I don't understand what you're asking. 1 second, let me just turn this on, right? You're gonna say, I don't understand the question, right? Because you want clarity, you want to answer correctly, you want to answer in fact what the person is asking. So if you go into an interview and you don't understand, don't just jump to answer the question. You can ask that let the officer know, can you rephrase that question? I don't understand, and they will do it. Yeah. All right. Now, let's see. If it is that, and I'll tell you what they do is some officers in the interview, they will have the 3 seats set up. One seat is for the attorney, and the other 2 is for the petitioner and the beneficiary. Some officers, instead of putting the seats together, will put the attorney in the back. So I sometimes when I go in, I ask, where do you want me to sit? Right. So I'm not going to, oftentimes we are seated not in the same row, but behind the clients, right? Because they want to ensure that there is no funny business, no touching or things like that. And people think that when they go to these interviews, they have to be like so in love and so much touchy feely. So till at one point, I remember going into the interviews, and the officers would say, "I don't want no touchy business going on here," right? So you'd be surprised the least little things that can trigger, like, is this fraud? All right, now over submission of documents. It's like anywhere you turn Makajoke, you don't submit enough documents, it's like a fraud indicator. You submit too many documents, it's like what you're trying to prove. So the question is, where's the median, right? Where is it that you can submit documents where it's not too little and it is not too much? I remember I had a client, it was a 10-year relationship. Me personally, me no know some girl out a road good. Me no know own a date somebody for 10 years. Our client, she was such a nice girl, right? And I'm like, how you do this? You know, because this is trips back and forth. Me personally, I think you're fat and foul for mongoose. Yeah. Me not date nobody for 10 years. Me tell anybody that. If after, like realistically speaking, if after a year or two, you're speaking to someone and you don't know whether or not you're going to settle down, this is not a person for you. Obviously, you're at the bus stop waiting on the right bus to come, right? So somebody like me can't understand, oh yeah, I date for 10 years. But anyway, it's not my life. I can't tell people how to date. But you know, but the same question me have when she reached at the embassy, yeah? Because I told her, who dates for 10 years? But that's that was their life. Yeah. Wonderful young couple, right? And when we had submitted the docs, by the time she come in, it's nearly like a suitcase of things because it is 10 years together. And it was people who were extremely, when I say extremely active, them a go on this trip, them a go on that trip, them at this wedding, that funeral. It was like so much history, right? And we were in the time where National Visa Center was in fact sending, I guess, the physical things to the embassy. And when the client came, the immigration officer after the interview just care about the box. It's like so much things, right? Obviously, you have a relation. It. You can tell the history of these people, but young girls who watch this, don't do that. Yeah? Cause me can't understand. 10 years? No, a lot can happen in 10. You should be preparing for after a year or two, you should be preparing for your married life. You know, I don't understand that concept. Probably because some people are village people. I don't understand you're dating forever, you're living like this. No. Mm-mm. My grandmother never do it, and my mama never do it. Me not date you for 2 years. Go date yourself. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and no marriage. That's madness. All right. Stage photos. I will never forget this. I was in an interview and the officer said, when the girl come in, you can't see say, of course he's not gonna say it like this, but you know, say she a hot girl. When the guy come in, you know, say it's not a match. It is not a match. She a real hot girl, and this man is not a match. When he looks at the photos are taken, the man in the bed in sneakers. When you come in with bedroom pictures, it's highly suspicious too. I know for my clients, whatever you have in your personal life, your personal album, take out them pictures, right? Nobody wants to see that. They just want to see shared occasions. And by the time, cause this girl look like a supermodel, and you know, same a quaps, right? By the time man said, by the time him done question them, him just know says a fraud marriage, so he had to deny it. But strange enough, you can't always judge by that, because I was at a seminar and the husband now, it was, and this is something the officer could not get over. The man come in, the man handsome na backside. And when the woman come in, no say you have to hold your breath. But you best believe it was a real marriage. Him go at the house, him dig, him look. Yeah, all 10, 15 years later, them still married. So you sometimes the physical alone does not determine it. Yeah. Woman must have one big hole, something that grow to her face. Yeah, and the boy a hot boy. But the woman is a very nice lady. Yeah. And some people really don't look at the physical. And that was one of those marriages. Yeah. All right. If it is the attorney is known for fraud, then yeah, or you go and you use an organization or a person who is known to submit fraudulent applications, then absolutely your application is also going to be suspected as it lands. You probably your situation may not be fraudulent, but because the person who has submitted these applications in the past has always submitted fraudulent documents, then yeah, as your application land, yeah, there's a trigger on it. So you also have to be very careful as to who do you use to put in your application, because you may just borrow from the crosses just because either the attorney is known to put in fraudulent applications, or the preparer, right? Some preparers are such that they are in fact known to always submit fraudulent applications. All right. Creation of documents. This is something that gets questioned a lot, right? The documents are in fact created right before the interview, but there's a caveat to that. Back in the day, the work permits and the social security numbers were taking like forever, like really long to in fact be issued, right? And it was such a difficulty that people could not get documents. And I remember before it started, an officer had said to me that we're gonna be, bear with me 1 second. Caller, you are on the live.
Good morning, Miss Osbourne.
And I'm hearing I am good, my love, but I'm hearing, do you have to kind of turn down your YouTube because I'm getting a feedback.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Is it better now?
Yes.
Yes. Can I speak with you off the air when you're through with the program, please?
Sure. You could call at wow, we have running out of time. Sure. Call me at like 10:30.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye. All right. So these are the things where, they look at. So the interview is coming up, right? But when the officer said to me, because then the interviews were taking like a year or so to come, then the officer said, oh, we're going to be going back to the time where the interviews come quickly. And I said, but this is nearly like you're setting people up to fail, because without that social security number, you're not going to have joint documents. And the officer smirked. And this was why where a lot of people were submitting, and most people were just ending up in Stokes. They had no documents. They hadn't gotten the work permit. They hadn't gotten the social security number. So as a result of which, they could not go and apply for certain things, right? But it's a little bit better now in terms of the work permits. I remember one of my clients, and he was most upset. The work permit took 2 years to come. But this was a client where I told from the jump, because he came to me with a history. And the history was that the first marriage was denied for fraud. They didn't hold 204C bar, but the first marriage was denied for fraud. And I said, your case is going to pend long. And it took us about, literally, when we got the first interview, all of a sudden it was canceled. And I remember I could not have gone, so I had one of my colleagues hold for me. And I'm like, what happened? And she was like, very nice girl. She said, Antoinette, they said the file was not delivered to their office in time. All right, that's fine. it took him about, I think, 3+ years to get an interview. And I said, interview is here. I hope you're ready. I had prepared them and so forth. And the interview was brutal just because of the history in his record where he was previously denied with the first marriage. He got the card, right? But it's just sometimes the battle that you have to go through just to get the card. Yeah. I have never had a client where if they've had a prior case where they went into a Stokes and it was denied and they got remarried and the second spouse is filing for them where that interview has not been held because the officer in doing their job has to determine that there's not marriage fraud that was committed in the first marriage. So you're going to be questioned on the first marriage. And the reason is if they can prove the first marriage was in fact fraudulent, they're going to deny the case that you are currently before them on, right? All right. Mavis is asking, good morning. Is it true you obtain a work permit without marriage? This is Mavis from Queens, your longtime friend. All right, we love you. Keep us real, also informed. Thank you. All right, so what's happening now? You can't just get a work permit by itself. It doesn't work like that. The work permit is derived from a main application, right? Because it is just a benefit of your main application. What I know is most of the border crossers that are coming in, everybody's filing for asylum because asylum is a way they can stay here, they can get their work permit, and they can, in fact, adjust their status. But one of the dangers with asylum is any frivolous asylum case where it is determined to be frivolous, they will never get a green card in America, ever. Yeah. And I've always stated when someone is in deportation proceedings, the judge always ask if there's an attorney, if the client understands the ramifications of a frivolous asylum application. Because people just put in this application because it gets a work permit quickly. But you have no merit and it's determined to be frivolous. That's it, you're done. All right. Now, let's look at so your documents which are issued right before the interview. And some documents will be issued right before the interview because that's just when they get their social security number. So that's going to be your explanation as to why is it you're just getting your documents, right? Now, another red flag for them where often they will send out officers to investigate is for people who just enter the country and they go ahead and marry and apply for the green card. That's one of the biggest fraud triggers. You just come. How is it you build a relationship so fast with someone to go ahead and get married? So when for things like that is very suspicious. Date of entry, time of marriage. Yeah. Unless you could have proved that you knew the person from before, possibly the person was traveling to come and see you in your home country. If you're able to prove that, that's different from someone where you've never known the person before, and all of a sudden you go ahead and you get married. Not going to work. All right. This is something I always talk about. Yeah. And as women, Back in the islands, when you're being raised, you were told to lock your legs, keep your legs closed. Where you go ahead, and it's not just for the women, because the men will do this too. You go ahead and you have children, extramarital affair. That means you go ahead and you go cheat, and in cheating, you got a baby. It is not your spouse's child. That child is an indication of marriage fraud. So when you have these extramarital children, you best believe that is a sign of fraud. It is a sign of a sham marriage. And what some people will do is they will fail to reveal the child. How a lot of them get catch is when they apply for the citizenship and they forgot they lied in the interview and they put the child on in the citizenship application. This is how now it wakes them up, right? All right. Another indication, if you're just tuning in, we are looking at sham marriages, legal ramifications, consequences, how it is able to be determined, right? All right, let's look at, I know for me, I had one of my clients that was just put into a Stokes just because he divorced and got remarried too quickly. The officer said, no, I don't trust a client. Just get divorced and marry so soon. Yeah, so he put him in a Stokes. I'm telling you. Yeah. But these are the things that are fraud indicators. Yeah. Now, another thing is what do I call it? Summer, winter, autumn, spring, winter, that sort of relationship where there is a huge age difference. Yeah. I'll tell you, I've had clients with age differences of 30 plus years, 20 plus years. If it's 10 years, me not care. But oftentimes when I see an age difference of 20 plus years, 30 plus years, I know my documentation better be right. Yeah, because this is also an indication for fraud. So if someone is coming to me and with such a relationship, right? And they have absolutely no document showing the history of their relationship. No, I personally tell them I can't put it in. Go and build something, you know, because coming to me with that, you are under the microscope, right? Cultural differences, Christians and Muslims getting married, people of especially different ethnicities where your people always at your tribes always at war. That's also an indication. Yeah. Now, this is where I would say cock mouth kill cock, where you're both in the interview, they suspect fraud. Yeah. And I will never forget, I had a client, she came from Florida, and she's a very pretty girl. And her husband just, he never did act. And she said the officer was so aggressive because she could not believe that a girl like her would pick up this guy. And she said in the interview, the guy went ahead and he wrote a letter that stated she paid him and it was fraudulent. For them, that's a good enough indicator, yeah, for fraud. Now, one of the things that they will look for a lot And this is where I caution people in writing these love letters. I call it love letters, where they write immigration and they do a letter that they are, in fact, withdrawing the petition. It becomes very dangerous, however, where you and the person make up and you're continuing with the application. By you submitting this letter, and people will do things in anger and do not realize the ramification it has on the immigrant's file. And I had a client where she put her friend for watch her man. Yeah. And when you are carrying back news, especially when you deal with married people, marriage is important. Yeah. And I always say, anytime you want to destroy your marriage, start bringing people into your marriage. Guaranteed destruction. She told her friend to watch her man. And in the friend watching the man, the friend come back and say how he's having an affair. So of course she mad. So she sends into immigration and she says she's withdrawing the petition. He married her for fraud. So everything just blank. So now she comes to me and she said, Antoinette, I made a mistake because I think his application was just at the embassy for a year or two. She said, I made a mistake and I had withdrawn the petition. I said, you make a mistake? You can't make a mistake like that. She said her friend now come back and tell her a year or two later that she wasn't sure the man was in fact having relations on her. So I said, in one day, based on the word of this woman, and this is why I don't like long distance relationship. It creates too much doubt. You're possibly wondering, what is the person doing? If they're seeing anybody, you call them, you can't get them. Especially some people like to call. I remember my client in Africa, it was like 3 a.m. in Africa. He called his wife. The phone ring one time, the girl answered the phone. Me? Master, you could have called 3 o'clock. I am fast asleep. You not get me. Sorry. You can't believe why you want me out. This girl at 3 o'clock, and I said, he said, I think she's sleeping. Somebody said, just try her. Just no, sir. This a girl answer the phone. Oh, me, you'd never get me. When I not pretend. No, sir. But yeah. They don't have to accept the fact that you're now saying it's a bona fide marriage. They don't have to accept that you claim you made a mistake in withdrawing the petition. They can still hold fraud. So now, in a fit of anger, your one decision has now turned your life upside down. And I know for me, I always try to say to my clients, are you sure? Because if it is that they have an argument and you're just coming to withdraw the petition, I like people to come home, because guess what? By next week, them good again. So you could have just created a disturbance for nothing. And you going back later and saying, look, I made a mistake. I no longer want to withdraw the petition. Because you'd be surprised in anger what people put down on that paper. Yeah. And you really should be sure, because now you go into an interview, your interview is going to be rough. Get ready for a stormy weather, right? You have now caused the officer from the get-go, get the file, and now to doubt the marriage, right? So just, be very careful what you do in anger. So Pauline is asking, how long will it take when you file for your parents? Generally, it's supposed to take anywhere from, and it depends. If your parents have a clean background, sometimes it comes in 6 months. If it is that they are doing an investigation or the officer just don't get to your file, it can take up to 2 years. So it really just depends, right? All right, living apart. I know for clients who come to me and they're like, Antoinette, we're living apart. I will often say, come back when you're moving together. Unless the person in the military, I'm not doing that. Yes, I'm not going to let your file have like a fraud trigger. I know them start watch all my clients. No, go fix your life. Because some people are live some life out a road, it don't make sense. You are fat and foul for mongoose. As some me see it. Like, get your act together. Unless it's a long distance relationship and you're processing through the embassy. Unless you're in the military. Yeah. Or unless it's like school purposes and you can show that as school done, you come back home. I'm not doing it. It don't make sense. Who does that? I'm not do it. All right. Some people may have like a job in a different state. You better have your tickets. You better have your tickets showing how often you guys are traveling back and forth. It's not worth the headache. Sometimes you get put in a stokes. Then the case happen. Then you call down my phone. Why them don't approve? No, it's not worth the headache for me. All right. Future petitions. So now it is that they have determined marriage fraud, right? Having a determination of marriage fraud turns your life upside down. All right. Your future petition cannot be approved unless you're in removal and you're able to apply for a waiver. It doesn't make sense, right? So your future family petitions, whether it is your daughter, your next wife, your sister, anybody file for you, 204C bars, it's not going to get approved, right? Your employment case, your domestic violence case, you could have had a fraud marriage determination on your first marriage. You go ahead and you entered into a second marriage. Your second spouse abused you, right? And you have an excellent domestic violence case because you have now a fraud case on the first marriage. Your domestic violence case is not going to get approved, right? These are the things that how your life really can turn upside down. Your investor visa, it's not going to happen for you. Your business visas, not going to happen for you, right? Now, if the marriage is determined to be fraudulent, then you filing for the stepchild is not going to get the card. But when that child becomes older and let's say they met somebody and that person is now filing for them, they don't have that 204C bar. They were just a child in their parents' application. So the 204C bar really does not apply to them. All right. Now, this actually happened to one of my clients. I think back in the day, the scamming was so hard. It was so hard. I think USCIS was being flooded with so much fraudulent application. Probably still happening now. Yeah. What happened to my client? He went, and this happens to a lot of people, and don't judge people. They come here, they're trying to look a better life. They're trying to look away. They're trying to feed their family. Simple. And he went to someone who pretended to be an attorney. And it just amazes me. I think the people who do these fraudulent applications make more money than attorneys. They have more clients than attorneys because they want to stand in the position as Jesus Christ, right? And like they can provide the way to heaven, right? Because getting legal status sometimes nearly like heaven. You're able to get rid of a lot of crosses, a lot of disadvantage, a lot of people who just abusing you. Having legal status puts you on a different platform. And he went to the person and they said, yeah, we can get your card. We can put in the application. Don't worry. But that one, don't worry, turned into a false marriage certificate. So by the time an application was put in for him by the real spouse, and it is questioned, like she named Jane Marie. Who is Jane Marie? Even don't know Jane Marie. But what he did not know was that the gentleman had put in an application stating on a marriage certificate he was married to Jane Marie. Never meet a Jane Marie in her life. So now the case gets denied. And the attorney he had at this time had appealed it for him. Now, the appeal came down that because there was no real person and there was no real marriage, the marriage did not exist, then he could go ahead with his second marriage. The problem is, by this time, the second wife, she tired of the foolishness, her life now move, she gone. Yeah. So this is how these sham marriages can affect you. So yes, it does not prevent him because the marriage never exists. There's a difference where you get somebody to make up a marriage certificate claiming that you were married. In fact, you were not. But you're not going to be subject to a 204C bar that is like a permanent block. But what happens is if you have somebody who, because some people get tired, because it's like they're not seeing you doing any movement. And when the case gets denied, there's no work permit. So you can't contribute to the house. People get frustrated. And this is where, if you don't have a ride or die person, when you put in this application, it doesn't make sense. I'll never forget, my client came in and he's like, Antoinette, I got married and I'm looking to put in. And he was kind of giving me a hint, and to me it sounded like the woman was like truly abusive. And then one of the worst things is he called her on the phone, and I heard this lady. This lady was like the devil. And I said, I'm not putting in that application. The woman was so controlling. And I told him, you have to find another lawyer. I'm not doing it. This is horrible. And I don't think you should be in a marriage and people speaking to you like say you're them pickney. Yeah, so I never took that case. Sorry. All right. Now, there's a difference, and I want people, when they get their decisions, if you have had an application and it gets put in and you get a denial, you have to look at that decision. The fact that, let's say that your marriage just get terminated, because you failed to produce bona fide documents, is different from a marriage fraud determination, right? The marriage fraud determination is death. You get a 204C bar, that's death. The fact that you failed to put in bona fide documents, that's completely different. You can move on from that. But to move on from marriage fraud, unless you're gonna be in like deportation or filing for a waiver, forget it. Yeah, no new petition is going to happen for you. All right, let's look at bigamous marriages. Yeah, this is where you're married to your spouse and you're also married to someone else. If your second marriage is bigamous and it's not valid, but the second marriage was a sham marriage. Even though the marriage is not valid, immigration will still hold a 204C bar on you, preventing future petitions being approved. So don't think just because that marriage wasn't valid, they can't hold sham marriage. They're going to hold it. Yeah? Because you have taken the necessary steps to enter into a marriage to evade immigration laws. So I want to encourage people, be very careful. Don't let desperation put you in a situation where you're going to be at a standstill. You can't move because you have this determination. It's not worth it. Yeah? All right. How do we ease this fraud marriage? If the same spouse who they hold fraud marriage, right, goes ahead and refiles for you, and you overcome that sham marriage determination, and I'm going to take out the people who definitely go ahead and write that they entered into a sham marriage. You different. I'm talking about people who probably they never had enough documents, the statements were inconsistent, and they're able to later on go back and reapply. These are the people I'm talking about. For you who went ahead, both you and your spouse sign off it's a sham marriage, yeah, or probably your spouse just signed it's a sham marriage, that's an issue, right? And I'm going to end with this. Let's look at the criminal consequences of this. What are you looking at? You are looking at a fine of $250,000 plus 5 years incarceration. So that's a consequence of engaging, because there is a criminal liability to this. It's not just a fine. Your liberty is at risk for 5 years. That's the consequence of a sham marriage. All right, so we are at the end of the program. Lord, what a way I go over today. Anyway, enjoy your Sunday. Have a beautiful Sunday, and I'll see you here next week. Take care. Bye.